Hey everybody, On here coming to you with this month's video. It's just getting ready to wrap us into December of 2021 as we round out this year. I really wanted to be outside, but I've been trying for a few days and the weather is just not cooperating with me. There's very heavy winds out, and so I just finally conceded this morning and said, I'm gonna film inside today and go with that. So this month, what I really want to bring out is a topic that I think is probably hitting a lot of people. At least that's the feedback that I'm getting from people. And it's something that's coming up pretty big in our December codes, which is about stability. And there's a lot of people these days that are starting to feel not so stable. Now, in the past, you've heard me talk about actually a lot of things, different times where I've talked about just resting into the uncertainty, going with that flow, those sorts of things. But, you know, stability really has its own interesting codes to it. And so this month, in talking about it, I think it's going to be interesting in the sense that we are trained as a culture and as a society that stability comes from things. It comes from what is outside of ourselves. And of course, we know when we get down to the fundamentals, it really doesn't come from outside of ourselves. It comes from within ourselves. And stability has a lot to do with how strong our soul connection is. So a lot of times when we are not feeling very stable in the world, we're actually finding ourselves to be lost in materialism. And a lot of times we're not even aware that we're in that space, but we are. So that materialistic aspect really pulls us away. It distracts us. It takes our attention off of our soul processes, our soul self, living from the heart center, living in that divine alignment. So when you consider that and you're looking at those pieces, it brings a whole different perspective in, because now it starts to connect into how stability is really connected to the inner self and the divine self as opposed to outer things. So a lot of times when people think of stability, they're thinking, okay, that means I have a home, I never have to worry about whether I can pay my rent or pay my mortgage, or whether I can put food on the table or things like that. So more and more in this collective energy, people are starting to feel that shaken up. Even if it's by choice, they start to feel that shaken up. And a lot of people have said to me, they've said it to Jesse along the way, how do you seem so stable when you're traveling, when you're on the road, when you don't have certainty of where you're going to be next month or even next week or things like that? And that is because that stability is coming from within me. Now, when we look at the basic code energy of stability, it's really talking about things that are coming up that are blocking us from moving forward because they're not sitting in divine alignment. So when you consider that and you say, okay, I need to be where I'm doing things from the heart. I'm doing things because they're connected to my soul self, not because I'm getting some kind of a paycheck or a reward for them. It doesn't mean that you can't accept any kind of money at all. What it means is that what you're doing has to come from that alignment and not be for the sole purpose of collecting money or material rewards. It has to be coming from a purpose-driven motive, in a sense, a soul-driven motive, something that nourishes and feeds and supports the collective. So you look at people, for example, they go and they work at a soup kitchen and during the holidays a lot of times. And so they're doing it from a soul motive, a giving motive, a kindred spirit motive, a divine alignment motive, as opposed to what they're going to get out of it. I would say that's the case 99.9% of the time. And when they're doing that, they might make other connections that then leads to a job or something else or other work, but they're not doing it to get that. They're doing it to help out those who are not as fortunate as them to be a part of something that's giving, that's soul-based. So when we approach life from this soul base, that's where our stability is getting created from. Now, when we look at feeling stable in our life, again, we've lived so much as a collective in these distortions that this feeling stable comes from what we have, from our possessions, from material things. But in reality, feeling stable comes from being able to release our attachment to those things. Again, it doesn't mean that you have to do without everything. It just means that you're not attached to any of it. You can't be manipulated by it. People can't use that to control you. And you're not living in a way that anything in the world can control you, because you're coming into the soul self and you're placing that as a priority. Now, another aspect when we look at the flow and the currents of stability and what that is about, it is about self-sufficiency. First and foremost, stability starts with self-sufficiency. So this is why there's always a big emphasis on looking at these freedom pieces, looking at these aspects of how can I live without attachments? How can I live without being so reliant? And again, it doesn't mean that you have to do without electricity or you have to be totally off the grid or all of those things, but you live in a way that you're not reliant on them, so that if any of those things did go out, you wouldn't just totally fall apart. That you're developing your skills. So it always starts with this drive to develop a skill, to develop a self-sufficiency, to not have these dependencies. Again, you can, some of the strongest relationships, for example, out there are interdependent. They're not reliant on each other for their happiness, for their survival, things like that. So the strength really comes, and our strength as a collective is really going to come from this aspect of self-sufficiency. And it's very important mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, to develop those skills of self-sufficiency. Then we can look at when we move more and more into that self-sufficiency, we start to see victories show up. And those victories come naturally, again, because we're not living in these attachments. We're not reliant on material things for our happiness, for taking care of us. We know that we can take care of ourselves even if things get rough, even if the roads get bumpy along the way. Those victories then help us to open up our mind. It helps us to tap into true wisdom, and we can learn from the experiences we're having, and we can also share and to teach others with the experiences that we're having, which is really important and valuable. From there, what it does is it creates heart openings and heart connections. This is how stability is developed. As we develop the wisdom and the interaction of that, then we move into opening the heart center and we come into the giving. So now here's where we really unlock those codes of stability and can really put them into an active space where they're really perpetuating a lot of good fortune for others, ourselves, the world in general, our collective as humanity, and it nourishes and supports humanity, because now our priority is the ethics, the spiritual, doing the so-called right thing, as opposed to just doing something for the sake of a reward. In there, this reward system has, I think, in many ways been very detrimental to humanity in there. And a lot of what we do in the world oftentimes is based on a reward, and not because we're doing it from the goodness of our heart, because we're driven from our soul self in some way to do it. When we tap into that heart space, we actually create a calm, we create a stillness within us. And that is where the alignment can happen. That's where we step into divine alignment. That's where we can really connect. And of course, once we come into that God connection, that divine alignment connection, we now open a door where anything is possible. We now open the door for action to happen. We now open the door for things to come through and to shift and to change. And oftentimes what happens is that's going to come in the form of some sort of healing. Something that maybe we've been holding on to very strongly, we can let go of. It can create physical healing. It can create mental well-being, emotional well-being. And you see, this is really where stability is coming from. It's coming from that peace of mind. It's coming from healing the worries and the anxieties and the tensions and the stress and all of these pieces. And the more that our body heals and we feel that wellness in our mind, our body, our spirit, our soul, all of that, it brings us again into a stronger connection. And as we tap into that stronger connection from the space of health, we can now unfold greater victories. We can now overcome those things that are the challenges, the obstacles, the things that are testing us, the trials, the tribulations, the initiations, all of those things, the things that we feel like, we consider attacks or whatever. We're clearing those, and that's really what a victory is. We're clearing it through our own connection is what's happening. And as those victories roll through, we open up and end up in joy. So stability has this really beautiful pattern to it if we will embrace it. It's a big call to get our priorities straight. So when we're not feeling stable and we're not feeling comfortable in life, a lot of times it's because we've got too big of an emphasis on the material things in life, and then we're not putting, our priorities are not in order, basically, we're not getting that spiritual priority as the top priority in what we're doing and how we're functioning or operating. And it's very simple. You don't have to buy anything or do anything. It's just a shift where you make that choice to open up and say, this is going to be my guiding principle. Integrity is going to be my guiding principle. Holding that door open for somebody is going to be a guiding principle. Doing whatever I can in the moment. And that doesn't cost anything. You see, coming into stability doesn't cost anything other than letting go of the blocks, other than letting go of the attachments. And that's really not a cost. That's a gain. So I hope you'll think about this. I hope you'll consider it. I think this has been really a great topic to address, especially here at the holidays where people are naturally looking to open up into that alignment a little bit more, looking to open up into spirit a little bit more. And I hope you'll give this consideration not only at the holidays, but moving forward throughout the next year, because a lot of things are going to keep getting shaken up in our world for a while. And I've got some interviews coming up that will talk about what's going on in 2022. But that aside, it's important for us to always remember that stability is from within us. So we have access to it at any point in time, no matter what's going on in our life. And no matter how much things get shaken up in the outer world, we can operate from this space. And when we do, we're going to open up some of the most incredible things. We're going to unfold some beautiful experiences, and we're going to set ourselves free in a lot of ways, especially internally. And I think that that is so important in these times. So I hope you've enjoyed this month's Code Insights, and I am looking forward to coming back to you next month. Keep an eye open. Like I said, I'll have probably several interviews coming up here over the next couple of months as we start to delve into what is going to be happening in 2022 and what's going on. I myself am trying to get settled in someplace so that I can focus in on writing the next edition of the Code Journey, and also to just bring some more insights for you and to open this door up. So this is actually a big personal pattern for me that's coming in right now and will be with me for the next year, at least the next 10 months in my personal codes. So we're going to see how all of this folds out, and I'm going to be looking a lot on how to deal with this stability piece. Take care, everybody, and I'll see you next month.